As a businessman who was involved in the real estate industry, I have a keen level of interest in today's subcommittee hearing to examine the issues of property rights in Cuba and U.S. and Cuban property claims against the Castro regime. I believe that in the Obama administration's zeal to engage the Castro regime at any cost, we have lost sight of a critical issue that has not received the priority that it deserves. Thousands of Americans and Cuban citizens suffered humiliation and financial distresses of having their private property stolen from them, some of them at gunpoint. Today, there has been no justice for their claims. Lest we forget, I think it's important for the American people to remember what led in part to the U.S. embargo against Cuba. In 1959, Fidel Castro brutally seized power and quickly nationalized the American-dominated sugar and mining industries. He froze bank accounts and confiscated property from thousands of both Cuban and American citizens and businesses in what the Inter-American Law Review called the largest uncompensated taking of American property by a foreign government in history. This stealing of American private property in part led the U.S. severing diplomatic relations with Cuba in 1961 and enacting a trade embargo and sanctions. In 1964, President John F. Kennedy signed a bill into law authorizing the U.S. Foreign Claims Settlement Commission to begin a Cuba program to address the claims of U.S. citizens against the Castro regime. Since that time, the Commission has adjudicated almost 8,900 U.S. claims, finding almost 6,000 of those claims to be certified. When we look at the financial value of these claims today, the total cost comes to over $6 billion. Now the Obama administration's re-engagement with the communist Castro regime, restoration of diplomatic ties, and pursuit of normalized relations have been performed ostensibly to empower the Cuban people. However, I have not seen any evidence of things getting better for the Cuban people. In fact, since December's announcement, we've seen almost a 120% increase in the number of Cubans fleeing to the United States. Over 3,000 political arrests by the Castro regime, spikes in violence against democracy activists, and rearrest of most of the 53 political prisoners who were released as part of the December agreement. The American people who decide to travel to Cuba under the relaxed Obama administration rules should at least be aware that their decision to spend money on Cuban hotels, tourism, rum, or cigars directly props up the communist military, intelligence services, and human rights abusers in the Castro regime. Americans should know that the hotel they vacation in may very well be a property that was stolen from an American citizen. As I stated at our last subcommittee hearing on Cuba back in February, I strongly oppose the Obama administration's decision to normalize relations with the oppressive communist Cuba Castro regime. U.S. law requires a change to the very nature of the regime through the establishment of democracy and allowance of freedom. U.S. law also requires the resolution of property claims issue. In 1996, Congress expressed its intent in the Libertad Act, stating that the satisfactory resolution of property claims by the Cuban government recognized by the United States remains an essential condition for the full resumption of economic and diplomatic relations between the United States and Cuba. That Libertad Act is not being followed by the Obama administration. If we are truly going to re-engage with the communist Castro regime, then I believe it's critical that we not only follow U.S. law, but that for the purposes of upholding the rule of law worldwide, we negotiate only from a position of strength on the issue of property claims. Should we fail to do that, I fear that we would be setting a terrible example and signaling to other bad actors around the world that they will face no consequences for stealing American property. This would be a terribly harmful message to send. Last year, I had the privilege to travel with the full committee chairman, Ed Royce, and ranking member Engel on a bipartisan delegation to South America, where we visited some of our best partners in the hemisphere, including Colombia and Peru. During our visit to Peru, I was personally delighted to sit with award-winning Peruvian economist Hernando de Soto one evening over dinner. Hernando is known best for his work on the informal economy and on the importance of business and property rights. The main message of de Soto's work and writings is that no nation can have a strong market economy without adequate participation in an information framework that records ownership of property and other formal economic activity. It is in this spirit that I wanted to convene this hearing today, because in Cuba, most of what passes for economic activity is simply informal opportunities for the Castro brothers and the Cuban military to siphon off money to prop themselves up, spy on their people, deny basic human rights, and beat and torture people who disagree with them. So in conclusion, the future of property rights in Cuba and the issue of U.S. claims against the communist Castro regime should not be forgotten in any U.S.-Cuba re-engagement. These issues impact not only U.S. business claimants with the highest amounts of certified loss, such as Cuba Electric Company, North American Sugar Industries, or MOA Bay Mining Company. These issues also have devastated individuals and families for generations. Today, I hope that experiences that the witnesses will share will inform our actions, offer constructive ideas on what responsible and just outcome on this issue would involve, and motivate the Obama administration to prioritize the needs of the American people above a legacy achievement with the communist Castro regime. This hearing could not come at a more important time, as recent press reports have indicated that the Obama administration has already made key concessions on limiting American diplomats' activities in a possible future embassy in Havana, which follows its removal of Cuba from the state sponsor of terrorism list last month, even though Cuba continues to harbor terrorists and proliferate weapons to bad actors around the world. With that, I look forward to hearing from our two panels of witnesses today, and I now turn to the ranking member, Mr. Albio Ceres, for his opening statement.